So we have to go over the Gemara itself. It's not so simple, the Gemara. We have to go back and forth what the Gemara really is saying. And really, there's a lot of machlokes rishonim and achronim here in the Gemara itself. So we have to really go into it again. What does it say really in the Gemara? Let's go over again. The Gemara in Kuf Chof Dalet says, Mani Rebbe, the Braise that says, Shvach sheshofu lechosim nach amisas avim. A Shvach mimele is, after the death of the father, is considered muchzak, that the Bechor takes double share as a Rebbe. Where do we find Rebbe? So we have to go Rebbe in Chachomim. And the Gemara goes in details what's exactly the machlokes in the psukim between Rebbe and Chachomim. So we did it yesterday. But I want to go over it again because a lot of things to be talked about here. Siyata Dishmai. The Tanya, as we learned, En ha-bechor noitel pishnayim b'shvach sheshobchu nechosim lachar misas aviyah. A firstborn son, a bechor, doesn't take a double share if the nechosim was nishbach mimele after the death of the father. But Rebbe says, Oimer ani, I say, bechor noitel pishnayim b'shvach sheshobchu nechosim lachar misas aviyah. Bechor does get a double share in the shvach of the nechosim after the death of the father because it's mimele. What if it's automatically mimele? Yes, by itself. Aval, but loy b'shvach shishbichu yasoimim lachar misas aviyah. But not shvach that the yasoimim, the orphans, created the mashbiach. They made it. They brought their value after the death of the father. But really, there's a lot of middle ground. We have two extremes. We have shvach sheshofchu nechosim, shvach that what the nechosim was mashbiach mimele after the death of the father, and you have shvach that the yasoimim created after the death of the father. But you can have a middle ground. You can have a shvach, kuloi shvach, that came by itself after the death of the father, but it didn't come from the nechosim. It came by itself after the death of the father. What? You can have mimele, but not from the nechosim. I'm reading the language of the Ritva. Venirim dvorim.
Where did it come if it didn't come from the property?
I'll explain. Venirim dvorim. Delerebi kol shvach. ששופכו נכוסים אליהם כומר, ואפילו לא היו כלום מאויסו שבח שמסר. Even though the shvach is totally new after the death of the father. There was nothing there before. Yes. No. It's not in the papers. Kegoin, the kod chuboiloni, since for example, you have a field that trees grew on it by itself. You know all those weeds and things that grow by themselves? They grew by itself.
So why it's not Mishneh Chasim?
The land belongs to me. But the shvach, none of the shvach was there before.
It came from the land.
Came from the land. No, I said not, it didn't come from the nechosim. It means it didn't come, was not there. Nothing of the shvach was there at the time of the death of the father. The whole shvach came by itself from the nechosim, by itself, after the death of the father. Mushrooms, wild mushrooms, could be wild grains.
No, grains, it has to be in the ground. It doesn't come.
Well, not true. Air can bring and wind and bring the seeds. No?
Okay, they steal from the Nechosim, I don't understand.
No, but the shvach came totally. Afilu lo hoyo klum me'oiso shvach shemesav. There was nothing of the shvach when the father died.
We don't have this writ though, right?
No.
Yes,
I'm just reading here.
No, you have it here. The base.
Oh, you have it there? Very good.
Bottom base. Bottom base.
Bottom base?
Yes.
Oh, they quote it. The bottom base.
Bottom base.
Nirim dvorim. Delerebi. Kol shvach sheshopchu nechosim. Me'aleim koma. All shvach and nechosim came by themselves. Ve'afilu lo hoyo klum me'oisho shvach shemeizav. Yes. So when I started, I was mistaken my words. I said even the shvach came not from the nechosim. Means as it's not true. Even if the shvach came from the nechosim by itself, but there was nothing there from the shvach from the time of the father's death.
That's how we understand from the beginning. No?
What?
You're saying that really the Havamina there was a tree while the father was alive. Then he died, and the tree gave birth. So that's why that would be the Havamina.
That would be the Havamina.
So people are trying to say, no, even if there's no trees at all, and like you said, in some way.
The whole tree. Kotchu, he brings an example.
What's the Havamina there?
Kegoin de kotchu boiloni. What is kotchu? Trees came out of the ground by themselves. I think grew. Trees grew. Not kidwa. Kotchu is. No, that's the Hebrew. Kotchu is like you have tafshil the gdiach tafshil. I think kotchu boiloni that is bashlu. Tree starts cooking there, starts growing. Or I'm reading now the Ritvo and the base in the papers of Slobodkin. Or shotziu ilanot perot.
The word you're talking about.
Or shotziu ilanot perot. Or the trees took out fruits out of the trees. Fruits came out of the trees.
But wait a second. The all destroys everything you just said. The all shotziu ilanos perot. That we know already. That's not. How can you say, oh? I can understand there was nothing and suddenly a tree grew. Okay, that makes sense. To the Havamina, we had a Havamina not. But that was the case at the beginning. That's how we started to understand the case.
No, normally when you read the case, is Po Muchkeres, Yoldo Vlad. And also Vlad, you can have many types of Vlad. You can have the baby was there in the father's days and it grew up afterwards. The baby was conceived after the father's death and it was born. That's the case of the Ritva.
That's the case of the Ritva.
That's the whole thing came after.
No, that I understand, but
and even
to sprout.
What?
To grow forth. To sprout. To grow forth. To sprout.
Yes.
Okay.
To sprouted trees in the field.
But that was like pshita.
It was not pshita.
Why?
Because the case of the Mishnah simply means the tree has fruits, but not fully, and it came to fruition. But from 0 to 100,
No, so
that's a big chiddush. That as long that it came by itself, even though the whole thing came after the death of the father, it's still considered part of the father's muchzokus. Because the Braisa, let's go back to what we read. Let's read Rebbe's words again. I want to explain what's the chiddush there is. The reason I brought this ritva, because in logic, we have to think now, what really Rebbe is saying. Let's read Rebbe's words again. Because Rebbe brought two extremes.
Right.
Rebbe, let's read Rebbe again. Rebbe Oimer. Oimer ani aise.
It's the Tosafos that talks about the middle cases, right?
All the
Between
Rishonim.
those cases, right?
All the Rishonim bring. Ritvo, we wrote the Ritvo, brings the middle case.
Yeah. But the Tosafos also.
Where Tosis brought it.
Right here, the first Tosafos, right?
Yes.
Mukaret?
Yes.
All those in that Tosafos, doesn't it bring these middle cases where they themselves didn't do the work, other people did the work? In the properties?
Well, I don't see. I don't see what you're saying.
People, they didn't plow.
No,
And they
no.
didn't
Tosis didn't say that.
Other people said that.
No.
Other people did that. Akerem. Akerem shavku.
Yeah, but nothing.
The shavking lay, heka de'e ma'alim lay mazona. And these aren't those middle cases? It's not in between. It's in between what Rebbe is saying.
No, it's not in between. No, just different people did it. So let's read Rebbe again. Rebbe says, Oimer ani aise, Bechor noitel pishnayim, a firstborn son takes a double share. Beshvach sheshofchu nechosim lachamis hazavim. Shvach, that the nechosim will mashbiach after the death of the father. Now here I can have two options. I can have the examples of the Gemara, that the father left a cow which is muhkeres and muskeres ve'adachim, in the hands of others. So the schirus and the chakirus started in the days of the father. Or a baby, or a be'efer v'yolda. She was on the field and she gave birth. But when the baby was conceived in the time of the father. What will be if the baby was conceived after the father's death? What happens was rental after the father's death? Simply, rental after the father's death. This is exactly the last case. Bonu batim, not to kromim. Because who created, if it was there afterwards? Well, let's see. Aval of Rebbe, aval loy bishvach, shishbichu yosoyim achamis asavien. But shvach that the yosoyim created after the death of the father.
So simply speaking, you can read shvach de chefza or shvach de gavra. That's simply how you would read.
1 second. I want to say the deal from the Sefer. Aval loy bishvach shishbichu yosoyim achamis asavien. If the yosoyim created the shvach after the death of the father, you don't get it. But if it came by itself after the death of the father,
You could get it.
it's part of the first case.
Right. Simply speaking.
So since Rebbe said two statements, if he would say only one statement, that what? That Bechor takes a double share shvach, sheshofchu nechosim zavim, so I can read it the minimum or maximum. And I would say, since Rebbe didn't say, it could be everything, or since Rebbe said I can be conservative and only the cases he brought, the Tosefta brought down, which is Rebbe, it's only the Vlad was there, the Paul Muhkeres and Muskeres B'yad of her father. What?
Something started while the father was still alive.
Correct. And that's the example of the Tosefta.
Right. Simply speaking.
Similarly, but Rebbe, which is the Mekoyer, said the opposite statement too, that the Esoimim, also really in the Tosefta. It says, Aval bonu botim and not to kromim, and Abraham. But what happened if the kromim came by itself?
That's not included.
Is out of the second box and it's a part of the first, or is also out of the first?
Well, it depends how you read the...
Okay? That's what I'm saying. It's unclear. We have to prove now. Now we have a problem. Something is not clear. We're going to start learning the logic in the psukim. And what's the Mekoy? We're going to have to go back and forth and see what is it.
In the Lashon is definitely Chefza Gava, that's for sure.
The what?
That's when it's the Chefza produced by itself, produce something. Then
Either way, even though the whole thing came by itself.
Completely after the death, it's called the Chefza, the Shevach of the Chefza. But if anything...
Yesoimim is the Gavra, the children did it.
Anything, or they build, or anything that has to do with a man doing something after the father's death, that is excluded.
And what about what he asked, Rabbi Yoshua? What about Yav Acher?
You have what?
Not Yesoimim, somebody else?
No,
From the property that the father, what's the father's? That the father did stuff on it, but they didn't do this thing.
No, the father didn't do anything, but the Yesoimim didn't do it. So a third person did it.
No, but the father had the land, the father worked the land, but this stuff they brought in on their own. And they did on their own. The land existed, he worked the land in some cases.
Yes.
But the stuff that they're getting here, other people did. All of a sudden, the other people came and they plowed, They put new trees in.
I hear what you're saying. You're saying that if it's Dafka, they're assuming because they're part of the heritage. They're the one who are producing. So of course they're not going to give two to their brother. There's no reason. They're all partners. But if you say it's Acher, maybe you're right. Maybe you wanted somebody else who added something or built to the house.
We're working now on the Gemara back again. In the language of Rebbe. In the language of Rebbe, Rebbe said that, I'm reading Rebbe's words. Rebbe Oimer Ani Aise. Bechoyer Noitel Pishnayim, a firstborn son takes a double share. Beshvach Sheshofru Nechosim like Nezavim. If the Nechosim, if the assets became better, added value after the death of the father, by itself, we call it Shvach Demimele.
What do we have to add by itself? Which is not in the text.
It's not in the text, but the Gemara, but the Rashbam adds it. Let's read the Rashbam. Let's read the Rashbam again. Beshvach Sheshofru Mimele by itself.
Right. So he's pushing the svara of Chefsa Gavra. When he says by
אבל כשביחו יורשים, הכל מיני פן שניים. So the difference is by itself or yorshim. What happens, now by itself, what does that mean? One second. There's two cases unclear. What happened by itself, but they started everything after the death, which is not the case of the Tosefta, because the kegon of the Tosefta is Poro Muchkeres Umuskeret, that the father rented it out, and the animal was in the field and gave birth, means, but it was conceived at the time of the father. What happened if you have the conceiving after the death, or was rented by, at least or rented by others after the death of the father? Not Yesoimim, but not the father. Middle ground. Somebody else rented out. What does that mean? How mean somebody else rented out? Somebody got control of it, and he started working it like. Or somebody enters.
not the guy from the Yoshi.
Not a guy from the ocean. Not legally. He just took it and started working it. There's a halacha. If I take somebody else's animal, I use it, I need to pay him. There's payment, there's rules. If I go into my friend's field, if it's made for that, I have to pay the fully. Not we learned it. Right? We learned it a long time, many times, all around. It should be ingrained in your beings. So there's a law, you have a middle case. Or, now we have another question. What happened if the Asoimim brought the added value, but the added value came from the thing itself? For example, the Asoimim came and started watered, and they brought, zevel. They brought in fertilizer and manure, fertilizer, and the tree became fatter. Diklovoli. So it came by itself, but they helped it. Okay, I'm asking now questions and Svore. And the Robert what it says. But it's our price. But it's our price. The Gemara brings this price.
It's not part of the Tosefta.
Okay, it's a different price. There's thousands of prices. This is our price.
It's not part of the Tosefta.
Oh, good, but we have another price. No matter our price.
Maybe it's the Gemara says.
Our price is a price. Come on, no Gemara, it's a price.
From the simple chiluk, it's
The Tanya, it's a price.
Maybe the first part of the price.
No. The price continues. Yorshu Shtarchov. If they inherited a Shtarchov, they inherited a document of a debt. Bechol Notel Bishnai. Now, why does it have to be Bedavka document? What about if it's the inherited debt, oral debt? Not Shtarchov. An oral debt. Shtar Choiv Baal Peh. No good. How do you know that, Rabbi Yosef?
I don't remember. I learned it
Right, the Rashbam. Okay, good. Good.
Won't you without Rashbam?
Pretty clear.
Pretty clear.
Only if they're the star. We don't know why. Only
So I want to medayek from Rashbam previously on our questions, okay? First of all, one diuk. I'm reading now in Kuf Chof Gimel Amud Beis. Gemara. I have to learn, go over the Gemara, read the Rashbam, and think together what's going on.
Okay, what line?
4 lines in the bottom. Sorry, not 4, 5 lines in the bottom. Iniach lehem aviem por mucheres umuskeres be'ad acherim. It's a quote of the Braisa. Osho yisaroi be'efer v'yoldo b'chono b'shnai. Says if the father left him a cow which was lease rental in the hands of others, or she was gazing in the field and she gave birth to a baby, b'chol takes double share. The Gemara has a question. I'm reading now in Kuf Chof Gimel Amud Beis, 4 lines at the bottom. Ashta muchna is 3. Ashta muchkeres umuskeres. De la birshus of the mora didu kaima. If lease or rental is not in the domain of the master, somebody else is using it as rental to somebody else. Yeah, the law is Amar Chokil. Say the Bechor takes a double share. It's not Ro, it's still Muchzok by the father, even though it's in reality in another domain. Roye Be'efer, when it's in the domain of the father. Just gazing in the field, but he owns it, and nobody else controlling it. It's in public domain, in the field. Miboye, surely they will take a double share, because it's more of a Muchzok. If somebody else controlling it, the domain of somebody else is still considered Muchzok and Motsui, surely something which is not in somebody else's domain, just is in free land, surely Miboye, and not needed to say that the Bechor gets got over the share because it's more of a Muchzok. So Gemara says no. Oh, Kamashwan, this is the Chiddush. The Muchkeres Muskeres Duna de Roy Be'efer. The Chiddush of the Sefer to tell you that both are talking in the same case. They're written together to tell you they're talking in the same case. What? Ma Roy Be'efer Shvocha de Mele Kosi. Roy Be'efer, which the animal gazing in the field, the Shvach, it's by itself. What do you mean the Shvach came by itself? How does the cow become fat? From the grass of the land, right? Who can let's see the Rashbam, the last Rashbam in the page. Ma roe be'efer shvocha demele meisav asode. If the animal, what?
Where's the Rashbam? I don't have. That's right.
The last line on the page. Ma roe be'efer shvocha demele why meisav asode. So the Gemara says, Muchkeres and Muskeres should be similar to Roy Be'efer. Ma Roy Be'efer, Shvocha Meile Kosi, the Shvach comes by itself, which means, which Shvach we talk about? Talk the baby. The baby grows by itself from where?
It doesn't say.
What do you mean it doesn't say? That we just read, what does it say?
It doesn't say baby.
What?
It says baby.
What are we talking about Roy Be'efer? We talk about the nose of the animal, the ears, the legs, or the baby? The Baraisa. What are we talking about? The baby or talking about the mother?
The baby.
I want the baby. Now it's a baby. What?
What's wrong with the mother? The mother, he got fat.
Okay, but it's not ours. It's not what we're talking about. It's not the Tosefta. When the Tosefta tells you a chidush that a firstborn takes a double share, we talk about that the baby grew from Mimele. What's Mimele? From the grass of the land. And the Gemara adds, and the children, the Yesoimim, didn't lose any food to feed it. which means it's mimele. Why it's mimele? Because it comes from the ground. But what happens if the ground is mine and the soil supported? Okay, they didn't put it into the mouth of the animal, but the animal's gazing in their field and they inherit the field. So they say, although it's not the Asoyim by hand, but it came from the assets of the Asoyim. So I wouldn't consider that mimele. Again, let's explain what the Gemara is saying here.
You're trying to say that the cow was on
The Gemara defines why Roy Be'efer is mimele, the baby is mimele, because the shvach, you asked me where we got the word shvach and mimele, right? It's in the Gemara. Roy Be'efer shvach and mimele. So who defines the word mimele? Rebbe Michael. Come on. So Rebbe's words, shvach mimele, the Rashba Meir is Gemara. Ma Roy Be'efer shvach and mimele. The Gemara defines that a mimele shvach, and the Gemara adds, and the children are not losing mazon, which means if the animal was eating the grass from the field of the children that they inherited, I wouldn't call it shvach and mimele. What do you mean? But the Yisraelim didn't build a house, didn't plant the trees, but their money, their assets produced it.
It's their grass.
It's their grass. It costs money. So it's not mimele. It's not mimele. Only if it's mamish, free range animal runs in the field and shvach mimele, and lo costs money, and the grass doesn't belong to them. Ooh, same way. Muchkeres umuskeres. Same thing if it's
Rental or
lease or rental. Is shvach or mimele. We talk about a specific case that the shvach is mimele. Why the shvach is mimele? But we talk about babies. If it's babies, so it makes us the same. Remember, we had a machlokes rishonim. Muchkeres talking about babies. We talk about rental, right? So if we talk about babies, shvach and mimele makes sense. It's similar. Oh, must be, and according to the Rashbam or others, I'm talking about rental, Toises and others. So we talk about what? Concept. Same with Muchkeres, or even Muchkeres and Muskeres, Shvach and Mimele kosi. Which Shvach and Mimele come? The rentals Mimele?
They don't do nothing.
The Yisraelim are not doing anything. The Shvach comes Mimele? What?
Yes.
Oh, it's mimele relation to the children. Since the children are not doing anything, so mimele, it's mimele. But the Gemara continues. The children are not losing any money to feed the animal. So let's see the Rashbam. The Rashbam here speaks a lot. Af muchkeres umuskeres v'shvach mimele. I'm reading the Rashbam on top of the page. Kuf Chof Dalet. Af muchkeres umuskeres v'shvach mimele. Kamay are we dealing? What's the case? So the Gemara answers, lichoiro, if muchkeres umuskeres not in his domain, he gets double share, surely Roy Be'efer not needed. The Gemara says, no, it's a chiddush that Roy Be'efer teaches us on muchkeres. That if we talk about muchkeres, the case is shvach mimele. Kamay, that's the case. The rental, when the father rented and leased the cow, the children, the family, or the father was not obligated to give food for the animal. It was complete rental by the renter, and the renter had to take care of the animal. The Yisraelim are not giving any food to the animal. That's what we're dealing. V'im toima comes the Rashba and he asks a question. Litne Roy Be'efer v'ano yodano du adin lemucheres umuskeres eicho where the lechaser mezoyna. He says we should have written only Roy Be'efer. That Roy Be'efer is mimele and they're not losing, that she's not putting anything there. So the same thing, muhkeres umuskeres, in that specific case, where they're not spending money, vadai, the bechor gets double share. So since muhkeres umuskeres, we're talking about a specific case. That specific case is not needed because it's being learned already from the second case. Velama li lemitnei muhkeres umuskeres klal. I don't need to write that. If we're talking about a specific case, the safe is megal nereisha, only a specific case, that muhkeres says that the Yisrael not putting any food on it, they're not feeding the animal that is rental and lease. If that's the case, it's totally muhkeres be'efer. What's the difference? So he answers, the itztrich is needed.
Why did they bring any case? You say any case that's Mamela, the increase is Mamela, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, but why the Bryce has to tell me a whole big list was not needed. So he answered. He answers. The itzich is needed. No, I didn't finish the question. Velama lelamide muhkeres umuskeres klal. The itzich too that we need again. Roy be'efer lelamed aleim. The beloy chasa v'zoyim. Why do I need a whole reisha and the sefer to teach me pshat nereisha? They talk about specific case. Just write the sefer, and that's all. There's no ered chidush. So he answers, itztrich is needed. Sal kedai techamin, I would think, kol muhkeres umuskeres, all lease and rental, loy shvachod b'meilahu. All rental or lease is not considered shvach b'meilah. Why? Even about babies, why is that shvach b'meilah?
Babies understand the baby.
But he says no. Lo shvach b'meilahu, elo rather, al yedei bnei adam, the shvach comes through people, shechorshim ba, that they plow with it, v'ovdim ba, and they use the animal to work with it, and it's worth money, you have to pay for it. V'lo lishkol b'bechor pishnayim. So now we have a case where we asked in the beginning, middle case. Again.
Right, the acher.
Acher.
That's what I asked now.
Yes.
I didn't mean the Tosafos.
So you have the Rashbam.
I didn't mean the Tosafos. I meant this right here. That's what I read. And
I didn't actually know where you're reading from.
Yeah,
But I
that's
said,
what
Toisa, I looked at Toisa's where you're reading and said, well, okay, it's not actually trying to
last night too, but I wasn't talking about that.
Okay.
I was talking about what I read last night. Right here.
One says he got it, so that's what you made good.
That's what I asked.
Okay, good.
Right.
1 second, let's go over what happened here. What happened here? The Rashbam, 1 second. 1 second. We're not finished. First of all, we have to, what's the half of it? There's a chidush, he says. If I would write only if I would say muhkeres umuskeres, I would say, if I wouldn't write in the Braise, I would say muhkeres umuskeres is not shvachad b'meilah. Even though the Yisrael are not paying the food. But I don't care they're not paying the food. All muhkeres umuskeres is not b'meilah. Why? Because it's done through a middle case. It's done through people that plow it, the rental, or those are rented, or those are leased. There's a third party, through people that need to plow and work the animal in order to pay for it. So therefore, Bechor will not take double share. What do you mean? Why? So if I have Yesoimim producing, creating, and I have the father had his assets, and it was created by itself. Now wait a second. Rental also, we have two types of rental. You have rental at the time of the father, before he died, and you have rental after the death of the father. And then we have to deal why I pay rental. Do I pay rental because I bought from the father, I made a kinyan from the father on the rental? Like I bought something, I bought rights to rent to use.
In the time of the father.
Time of the father, just I owe him money. And I bought it then, Physically, I use it through the days after his death. I already bought it then. So what the Rashbam is saying, that the people are plowing and working in it. Would I care what they plow and work? It's not part of the deal. Again, if the reason of the payment is usage, I understand what the Rashbam is saying. That since here it's a middle ground. If it wasn't written Mukeres Muskeres, I would think that the firstborn doesn't take anything from it. Why? Because it's not Shvach and Imela. It's Shvach of other people that created it. Must be, we see from the Rashbam, that the reason why do I need to pay the rental is the usage. It's not the kinyan that I acquire from the father, the rights. When the father gave me the animal, he leased the animal to me, or he rented it to me, then I did a Maisa Kinyan to have a schus, rights in the animal to use it for the next 2 weeks, a month, or 2 years, whatever it is. And if my father died in the middle, what do I care? And let's say I didn't use it. I still need to pay, right? Because I bought the rights to use. So what the Rashbam is saying is not Shvach Dinimela, because the whole Shvach, which means the reason of the payment, came through people's actions, other people's action that they plan work with. Those actions are not the reason of the paying. The reason of the paying is the acquisition that the father sold to somebody else. He says, I'm giving you the rights to use this animal for the next 2 months or 2 years or whatever it is. And he made an acquisition. And the Rashbam says, no. I would say, must be, lichoira must be, that the Rashbam holds 2 other options. There's 3 options how do I perceive rental. One way to perceive rental is what? As I said before, acquisition. That the father made a kinyan to somebody to use the animal, and he owes them money for that acquisition. That right, kinyan leishtamshus. I made a kinyan in the animal, a kinyan pegos, kinyan aguf, kinyan pegos, kinyan aguf domi. I have rights in the guf reference to the usage. And that's what the father sold by the rental or by the lease. So then, it's definitely then I owe him money. And I owe him money, it's like a milveh. I define it as a shvach nimela, not shvach nimela. But if the Rashbam starts saying that if it wasn't for the written clearly in the Braisa, just a sefer of Roy Be'efer, and one written Mukeres and Muskeres, I would say it's not shvach nimela. Why is not shvach nimela? Because other people created, it came through creation of people, and it's not nimela. The payment is not through the usage, the payment is the kinyan. Oh, must be that the payment is from usage. Now, in usage, there's 2 options. He was meshabed himself to give me a cow to be used. It's a shi'abud. Or I cannot use for free. When I use, I need to pay.
What are the 2
2
tzaddim?
major tzaddim is kinyan ishtamshus, kinyan peiros, kinyan agufli and peiros. Or the ishtamshus he cannot use for free. So from the Rashbam's point we see what? What do we see from the Rashbam's point? Can't use for free. Because there's a Maisa Kinyan, it's bimele. It's like a debt, a choiv, money. Money is shvach bimele when I collect it. Kamash malon. What's the maskone kamash malon? Yes. I'm saying ishtamshus, not kinyan. Kamash malon. Now, the Kiva Eger brings 2 sides. The Kovetz Eores brings 2 sides in it. I want to read in a few minutes inside. Also the Sivis. Kamash Melon, the Chiddush is. The question was the Kamash Melon. Let's see. What's the Chiddush? What's the Kamash Melon? Kamash Melon, the cave on that sins. The Yesoivim Atzmon, the Yesoivim themselves, אין חורשים בהם ואין תורכים בהם אלא אחרים. It's not the Yesoimim. The Yesoimim don't plow. The Yesoimim don't have any tirch in it. Rather others. So the Rashbam concludes, Shvacha demimei lechashmin Allah. I consider it shvach by itself. When they don't pay money, which means if I ask you a question, what happens if a middle guy? Our question. If you have a middle guy develops, he takes the cow and he develops the cow, he feeds the cow, and he soon have to pay a middle guy. It's called what?
It's not Yisomim, according to the way you read it. It's Yitomim Davke. It's the Yisomim has nothing to do
So if I would ask you, Rabbi Choel, the two statements of Rabbi according to the Rashbam. Rabbi Oimer Ani, Kol Shvach Sheshofchu Nechosim, Yesoim, the Bechor Achmis Aviyim, Bechor gets double. But if the Yesoimim did it, I don't get double. Means anything less than Yesoimim, you get it. It's like Mimele. It's part of the first thing.
It's just a deal.
Which means why Rabbi brought two statements according to the Rashbam? To tell you that anything less than the second case, it's already included in Mimele. What? Since the Yesoimim themselves are not doing, even though the father didn't produce it, it wasn't there from the father, the people produced it. As long as the children do it, even though somebody else, which means not the father.
You didn't answer the Achar Mitzvah Avim part.
Oh, it's unclear, but Lichoyra, since the Rashbam didn't say anything, and more of that, Lichoyra, I have a clear answer to the question. No. If he says the Charisha and the Avodah in it is the creation of the Shvach, that definitely happened after the father's death. Because true, let's say if the kinyan so started from the father and he gave you a kinyan for the next 2 years. So even though the father died in the middle, but the kinyan was always there in the beginning for the whole 2 years. But if it's for every second I use, I cannot use for free, right? So when the father was alive, the father was alive. But after his death, it's a new chiyuv of usage, not for free. So lichoiro, so we have two things here. We have a complete shvach after the death of the father. Number two, the shvach came through somebody else.
Right.
So the Rashbam has a double, they say in Spanish, double chidush, a double price, double chidush. The number one is the shvach was the whole shvach was created after the death of the father. Our first question in the Ritva, right? Number two, not in the whole shvach was after the death of the father. Somebody else created it, not the father. Still, because it's not the Yesoimim. As long as not the Yesoimim is not the end, so the Rashbam is very extreme. The Rashbam says, why Rebbe says a double language? Anything less than Yesoimim is part of the Meilis in. Okay. What?
There's nothing like clarity.
Yes. Yes, Rabbi Yosef. Yes. Yes. Oh, very good. Rabbi Yosef raised the point. He says, maybe my whole Chakira is referring rental. Rental I have, is it a Maisa Kinyan, Peirois Kinyan Aguf, and the father gave that Kinyan to the one who rented it? Or is usage? But a lease is much harder. At least you pay according to what you make. So it's much harder to say those Chakira by a lease. By Schirus, I have this Chakira. But by lease, it's harder. That's what you're asking? So you have to say the same thing by a lease. Same Chakira by Elise. Same Chakira by Elise. But we see from the Rashbam, and really, this Chakira is a Machlokes Rishonim. We have to spend some time on it. In the Kiva Eger, in the Kovetz Ores, in Toises and Bo Metzia, the Rishonim Bo Metzia. The reader is Machlokes Rishonim. It's all based on the Gemara Avodah Zorah. How do you read it? And how do you read the Gemara Bo Metzia? Bedavka or Bedavka. There's a contradiction between two Gemaras. And the Machlokes Rishonim how to read the two Gemaras. So it's really two ways in the Rishonim, how, and our sages, how do I define Schirus? And there's a lot of nafkaminas. And one of the nafkaminas is our sugya. But there's many other nafkaminas. That the Kivega brings down, the Kovetzoras bring down. It's only papers, by the way. We'll have to spend some time on it. Although, it's not my main goal this Thursday to speak about it. It's one of the things we have to speak about. But there's a lot of Mineu Bey here. In the Ta'amim, in the Droshes of Rebbe and Rabbanon, there's unclear, which is all part of all that, to start really reading and learning and understanding what it's saying here.
I don't see anything in the sheets from Baba Metzia.
Okay, let's open the sheets in a second. Open the sheets. Let's read we have the sheets inside. I'm reading Reb Kiva Eger. Yes, Reb Chaim, yes, what do you want to say?
Why don't we say like it's a continuation? The father's alive. They brought the rent. So if he died, just like the children are a continuation of the father, so the rental is a continuation of the father's relationship to the
True. It is a continuation of the father. It is. It is.
So if it's a continuation, then it's not Mamela.
It's definitely continuation of the father, but why do I need to pay the rental? I need to pay the rental because of usage. I cannot use for free, or because I bought the rights of usage from the father. Okay, so let's see. It's definitely that side is clear. Let's see the Kiva Eger brings the two sides. He says nafkaminas, the Kiva Eger and the Kovetzoras. And with this Kiva Eger and Kovetzoras, we're able to understand Tosfot, Rabbeinu Yoino, the Ritva, which is not really my prime goal. We're going to have to deal with it right now. I'm going to go into that. My prime goal is what we started yesterday. I read over the Gemara with all the psukim and went back and forth, right? What agree how each one is a psukim? And I want to read Rav Papa on it. And that's really what I want to get to. But we'll start with this, B'siyat Nishmai. Because we're on it, so we close this subject. Soicher Shemeis, you have it there in Kiva Eger? Yeah. This is a very important case. A guy rented a house or something, a field, and he died in the middle of the time of the rent. And his children, again, a guy rented a house, and the renter died in the middle. Can the children continue the rent? Father had a big business. He rented a house. He died. The children want to continue the business and use the rental. Can they do that or not? Obviously, yes. But the question is, they can use it without paying. You hear what I said? Can they use it without paying?
You mean like his father went to the factory?
Without paying. Let's see. Let's see.
His father had a factory and he died and he rented the factory.
No. The father had a factory, but the building of the factory was a lease, was a rental.
Right.
And he died, and the children want to continue the lease of the rental.
The maskir got paid already fully for the period? The rental?
No, he didn't pay it. He paid by the month.
I pay by month.
Right.
So why should the kids...
What?
You have to pay every month. That's part of the contract.
Every month, once a year.
How the question start?
You'll see. Un momento. When you start going to the depths of it, it's not so simple. Kiva Eger says, it looks like to my poor knowledge. Even if the father did not leave them any assets to pay the rental. There was no machinery in the factory, it's just an empty room. He didn't leave them any assets to pay the rental.
Even if he left,
So they pay from him.
so then so what? It is.
One second, listen. I'm explaining. Tzrichim leshalem aschirus mishalayim. They have to pay the rental from their pocket. They have to put their hands in their pocket and pay the father's rental. You hear? Again. You were doing that to the extreme. Opposite. The father rented and he died and he didn't leave anything. He left a debt. You have to pay the rental. He wanted to start a business. He dreamt about a factory. And the factory is empty. And he didn't leave them any assets. So they need to pay the rental from their pocket.
Are they allowed to terminate the rental like a lease instead of paying?
Why, they owe it to the father? The father owes money now?
Yes.
Where do you get that?
They don't have rights more than their father. Since the father didn't have any rights to use for free, Ochenami here also, the children, they don't have rights to use for free.
Not a whole. Has nothing to do with a whole.
What?
Nothing to do with a whole. Nobody owes nothing. Now they want to rent, they have to pay.
They have to pay.
Okay. But
They rent, they have to pay.
they don't have to pay for the father's debt. There's no debt.
One second. Just hang on. You'll understand in a second. Umikol makom, here comes the atomic bomb. Umikol makom, in any place. If Shaloimar is possible to say, the Aviem, the father, miyad right away, shesochar, when the father rented the place, what really did? He made an acquisition, he bought the rights of usage. And Nasa Bal Chov Al Domam became a debtor to pay the money of that acquisition. Right. Oh, he made them all, as if that's true. Vezocho Bashimush, the father, when he was alive, he signed a contract, he did an acquisition, he acquired the rights of usage. And he became a debtor of money. Ooh, what's the rule? If the father leaves you a debt and he doesn't give you any money to pay the debt, you don't have to pay the debt. The inheritors could say, Ovinu onu yoshim, we inherit our father, schus hashimush, the rights acquisition he did, rights of usage. V'choyvoi, in his debts, Einu numashalim, we don't pay, because he didn't leave any money to pay. Woohoo! Vedomi, Wild West. Vedomi, this is similar. Lekona metaltali. This is similar if somebody acquires movable things. Veloinosad meyem, and he didn't pay the money yet. I want to buy a car. I pulled the car, he gave me the key, but I didn't swipe the card yet. I didn't pay the money. What the rule is, metaltim niknim bekesef, beshtar, bemeshicha, right? U'agbo, so I did the kinyan, but I didn't pay the money. Umeis, and the person died. She made the acquisition. He didn't pay the money.
That's good business here.
When I read this in the other yeshiva, so somebody asked me, you know what? A person that has cancer, he knows he's going to die, who knows what? He starts going wild.
Buying spree.
What?
A buying spree.
He goes to the stock market. Woo, woo. I'm buying, signs contracts everywhere. The Yoshim Zoichim HaMetaltalim. If the father bought Metaltalim and he didn't pay, the inheritors inherit the movable things. V'choivo in his debt and Mashal, because they don't have to pay the father's debt, they don't have the money from him.
I mean business.
And this is the punchline. Ochenami here also. Schirus leyoimo memkaru. A rental, even for one day, it's a selling. You bought as a selling, as a sale. You bought rights in the cow, in the car, in the house for usage. Just prepared certain days, amount of days, lezman. By the way, this is the language of Gemara Metzia. Schirus loyim mimkaru. It's memkaru loyimu. But all the Rishonim there argue if that language means literally or not. So really, the Tutz-Donim of Kiveger is big machlokes Rishonim. There, we're going to read it Be'ezrat Hashem later on. But let's go back what really Reb Kiveger is saying. What Reb Kiveger is saying.
When you have Das Mafia, Das Koda, who said he coded, but he didn't pay. Where's the Das of the one who rented it to him? And he agrees to the sale.
By metaltalim you buy a metali by Mashiach Agbo. And the money, it's a debt. By land, it's not so. By land, the Gemara says land people buy with a document, and they don't agree to give you the land until you pay the money. It's not finished until you pay the money. That's by land. But when you go to a store, and you buy candies, bisli, bamba, you buy movable things, the Kenyan is by Mashiach Agbo. And the money is, you pay later on. Okay, I'm buying I'm buying a bag of milk. They're paying the money later on. Same thing is here. The father, he got a contract of a rental, and he died. So the children want to use it. Okay, if the obligation is because of the usage, you hear this Mechoel, Reb Shleime, Reb Baum, Reb Yeshua, Reb Moshe, Reb Menachem, there's a Hakira here. What's the reason I need to pay the rental? Because of the usage, I cannot use for free. The usage, shimush, bechinam, it cannot be bechinam to be with sachar. So the father died, the children want to use. They cannot use unless they pay, cannot use for free. But if rental is not usage, I need to pay for the usage. Rental is I bought, it's buying and paying. The father bought the rights of usage in this house and this cow and this movable things. What about movable things? He bought it, or a house, doesn't matter. He bought that right, now he owes a debt. That's the way rental works. So since, according to the second side, that's the way rental works. See, here we have a very unique case. The father bought the rights of usage and he owes the money, and he died before he paid his debt. The children inherit his rights, but they don't pay his debts if they don't have a way to pay it.
If they don't have a way to pay, or if he didn't,
if the father didn't leave the money access to pay his debts. Right. Like if the father bought metaltalim, he did a kinya but he didn't pay and he died, the children acquired a metaltalim and don't have to pay his debts if he didn't leave the money. Now everybody asks me, very strange, let them pay the debt from the metaltalim itself. He left them in the metaltalim itself. This is something people ask me and I didn't figure out an answer for that. Why don't you have to pay? Because they didn't leave me any assets to pay the rental. Here, the metaltalim itself is the assets.
Yeah, but it's not his anymore. It's the kids. It's not the father. It's gone. It went to the kid. It's not a Yerusha.
One second. How the kids own the metaltalim? Because the father bought it and he gave it to the kids, and now he owes also the debt. Let them pay the debt from when he gave the metaltalim. That's somebody asked me, and I don't know the answer for this.
I think it's what the oil said.
What?
Because it's no longer in the category.
אנחנו נלמד את זה עוד שנייה.
It's an inheritance problem.
צלם את זה, כן.
Just like the other assets that they had before. They may have other assets that they don't have to pay from also.
What?
Also, this asset that they inherit is now along with the other assets that they own. It's not part of the father's assets anymore.
Why not?
How about the property that they didn't inherit? that came to them after, that came to the father after his death, that the inheritance didn't look from that, he would pay.
Again, I don't follow what you're saying.
From that property.
The father left property and he owes debts. They pay the debts of his properties. He didn't leave any properties, assets to pay his debts. They don't pay his debts. Now, the father had no money. He only did one thing. He bought this beautiful car, BMW X7, who knows whatever it's called. Okay? Now, very expensive car. He did a Mashiach, he did a Kinyan, but he didn't pay for it. So then what? The children say, hey, we buy our father's rights. We inherit our father's rights of ownership, but we don't have to pay his debts. Good, because we don't pay our father's debts.
Otherwise, you never get out of the case. If every time you Yoresh metal that you don't Yoresh the chov, to have such a mitzvah, you have to separate the two. Otherwise, you always take the metal thing back.
Right. That's what
That's not what we're saying.
I know. We say nothing. I don't want to say why. It's like the father left assets. What do I care?
No, because once the metal belongs to the kids, and it has nothing to do with. It's not a dinya rusha. It doesn't belong to the father anymore that you pay the debt with. It's finished. It belongs to the kids.
And let's say the father left assets. So I need to pay his debts, right, from the assets?
Right.
So if it's another asset, I pay his debts. If this asset, what?
The assets still belong to the father. The assets and the debt are still in the hands of the father, even if he's dead. It's still the father. Now you pay the debt with the assets of the father. But in the case of metallic, it's not the same thing. Once the father is dead, the metallic belongs to the kid. It's not the father's anything. It belongs to the kid. So that's why
Belongs to the kids, right?
So
Great. But he got it from his father. And his father has debts. So he got assets from his father and let him pay the debts.
Maybe you got it from the father. It makes a difference where you got it, the car, but it's not your father's car. It's your car. And therefore I don't pay the debt. That's what we're saying. That's a stop.
I know what he's saying, but I don't say this. That's what he says, but does it make sense?
But let's say the
What's
father
it?
has.
It's a kivega. Kivega is not a baby
The father
here.
has something that produces
A lot
income.
of stores which I agree with you.
What?
Let's say the father has something that produces income,
Yes.
but isn't worth anything until after his death. Then it produced something that they don't inherit right away from him. Now that money can pay his debt.
Again, the story I wasn't
If
listening.
the father has something that produces income,
Right.
but it
So-
doesn't produce that income until after the father's death.
Good. That's called Roy. That's called Roy. Income that comes after the death. That's our case here. That's our case. If it's Mimela or it's not Mimela, what is it? How do I define it?
But
Is it Roy or Mimela?
that would pay his debt.
Yeah, that definitely pays debts. Yes. Because he left an asset that produces money, yes. Question is why this is not. They inherit is acquisition.
It's not a thing, it's just a schus. The schus to use it. Schus shimush, that's what you call it.
No, you're right, that's an rental. But in the case of metaltalim, that's hard. V'domi lekona metaltalim not tzad me'em u'meis. There I acquired metaltalim, it's not schushimus. So there there is yoshim have some value. The yoshim zoichim metaltalim v'choyven meshalmim. Why? You don't have to pay his debts and zoichim metaltalim, but he has money to pay. Because a metaltalim is itself, let it be the nechosim that you didn't pay for.
Yeah, but it's not the father's metal anymore. It's not the father's metal.
Okay, doesn't make sense. Ochanam ischius lo imam imkau. Yes, Reb Shmuel. Yes, I'm reading it. Is what? Yes. Yes. Kiveger says I'm reading the last two lines in the right column. Vedomi lekona metaltelim. This is similar to someone who acquired movable things. Velo inosam dmeyem umeis. He didn't give them money and he died. The yoshim zoichim metaltelim. The inheritors merit the movable things. Vechoy voy meshalnim. They don't pay his debts. Ochanami here, schirus leim memkaru. Schirus per 1 day as a memkar, and they will inherit the father's rental, but don't have to pay his debts because they don't have any money to pay for it. I don't know.
The way he says, ויכולים היורשים לומר, אבינו אנו יורשים זכות השני, וחובו איננו שני. You can't pay back the debt with the זכות השני.
And he says more. ויש ללמוד כן מדברי תשובס הרשב"א סימן 1000 חופכס. The תשובס הרשב"א, I saw the תשובס הרשב"א. I have the תשובס הרשב"א in my house. I asked somebody to print it for me. I would love to see it inside again. Maybe I have it in my pocket of my... Maybe still I have it. I hope I have it. Yes, I have it, I think. Here. Tshuvas HaRashba. This is Tshuvas HaRashba. Here. Small tshuva.
Not the salad.
You want to print it out? Okay. What?
I would have stayed for you last night, except that during the day, I didn't exercise because I had.
Who didn't stay? Who didn't
Then-
stay? I went to a wedding, which is a very good friend of my family for years and years and years and years. And the Chosam and Kala went into the room of Yehud and leave. And I wanted to say a Mazel Tov. So I called Reb Shlomo that I'm going to come late. The problem is they didn't leave the room till 10 o'clock. So I waited. לא, זו תשובה אחרת. זה תשובה של חייט, זו סוגיה הקודמת.
You have the truth of Rashba?
מה?
You have the truth.
נתתי לו לצלם. Okay, so let's go back what Reb Kiva is saying. Kiva is basically spelling two sides. How would I perceive rental? We're going to learn the Gemara. Reb Shlomo printed us the Gemara. We see what's the source, where this whole come from, where those two ideas come from. It's really machlekes and showing how to read two Gemaras. But the nafkamina Reb Kiva brings down is a very scary nafkamina. He says, if the father rented a house and he died, does the children inherit the rental without paying? The question is, how do I perceive rental? If rental is a payment of usage, I cannot use for free. So the father didn't buy rights of rental. He just has to pay for his usage. He died, he stopped using it. The children have rights to use with payment. Because he agreed that if you're going to use, you'll pay for me. So the children want to use, continue using it, they have to pay for the one to use. But if rental is not paying of the usage, rental is an acquisition that I acquired in the object, in the house, intrinsic rights for usage. We call it kiyan aguf leperos. In the body for fruits for usage. But as an acquisition, rights. For example, right now I'm using this chair, right? This chair has a lot of functionings. I can sit on it, I can stand on it, I can put books on it, I can sell it, I can put it as a museum, we can take pictures of it, we can enjoy it, right? A lot of usages. If I sell someone only the right to take pictures out of it, so he pays me for the rights of using pictures, or he has rights in the chair, reference to one of the usage, one of the functions of the chairs is pictures from it. So I sold them one of those rights. It's like the nail of Zundel, right? Remember I told you the famous story that I laughed with it? The guy brought, to put his hat in the middle of his house, with a nail, right? You remember that story? It's a very powerful story, right? But he bought the rights of the nail. Happens to be he destroyed the whole house, right? The whole user affects the whole user. In the middle of the night, knocks on the door, goes in and out, whatever it is. That's the idea. So, which means how do I perceive rental? Rental is used, and can I use for free and pay for the usage? Or is an acquisition? As the Gemara calls it, the Gemara in Babentzia calls it, schirus mechir leyoimi. Rental, it's a sale per day. We call it, in the modern time, we call it time sharing. When I buy time sharing in a seven season hotel, I remember I had a cousin, he bought time sharing in a 7-season hotel. Time sharing. You ever heard this concept, time sharing? Very common in America. It's an acquisition, or I pay. Potential use, I pay. Or I have rights. It's a sale per day, per time. The nafkimini is by us. If the father died, if it's usage, okay. The kids want to continue to use, they have to use, they have to pay. But if it's an acquisition and the money's just a debt, so we acquire his acquisition, and the debt we don't have to pay his debt, so we don't have his money to pay for it.
What do they do in those contracts? What do they do in
Let's see the Rashba. Yes, what do you want to say?
What do they do in those contracts? Do they say at the time of death that their membership expires?
What they do in those contracts is what?
Let's say a guy gets a timeshare.
Yes.
So the contract that they sign
Yes.
doesn't say at the time of death this membership expires.
He didn't say that. If he said it, he said it.
It.
If he said that's it, it's finished.
No, because if it said that.
If it said it's finished.
So if it said that.
Finished.
I get it, but it would show that there was some sort of havamina that it would be passed on to the next person.
Obviously. It definitely passes on. The question is, do you need to pay for it or not? Let's see the Rashba. He quotes the Rashba. Rashba wrote thousands of tshuvas. Over 2,000 tshuvas. Can you imagine? You know it's 2,000 tshuvas of the Rashba? It means he had to write every day 3 or 4 tshuvas from all subjects in the world. And every tshuva of Rashba is wow. It's like a bullet. Nishal oy, they asked me more. Beruven sheizkir bais l'Shimon. Reuven rented a house for Shimon. What? I'm reading Tshuvas HaRashba, and I gave it out here in Mount Zion. Those that are here in Frontali, they have it. Those on the Zoom don't have it. Can you pick it up through the screen?
Not yet, because I'm filming.
Okay. It's a small Tshuvas HaRashba. We'll just read it, glance it through, and we'll continue on. Nishal, it's only 5-6 lines. Nishal oid beruven shizkir bais l'Shimon. Reuven rented a house for Shimon, umei Shimon achar shnayim or shloisha chodoshim. Shimon, the renter, died after 2-3 months. Shadar bakar, he lived in the field. In Benoi, can his son, Yocholoi Marloi, can the son tell the owner, Beischo ani roitze, or eini roitze, I don't want your house anymore. V'schirus eini meshalem lecho, and I want to pay you rental. Elo lefi cheshbon shedar bo avi, only according to the calculation, how much my father lived there. Again, it's the same shaila. If it's an acquisition for 12 months, so the father bought the whole 12 months, he cannot retract If it's a buying, it's a one bundle. You can't cut the buying. If it's usage, whatever I used, I use. I didn't use, I'm not paying. But if it's an acquisition, right? The father bought 12 months package. It means he bought time sharing of 12 months. That's what he bought. It's a bundle. He didn't use it, it's his problem. The children cannot say, stop, we don't want to use it. Since we're not using it, we don't want to pay. Sorry.
Is that why in Israel they like to get 12 checks?
Correct. So the Rashba answered that the Raiva holds the law is with the Balabait, Imam Maski, the one who rents out, that the children cannot retract, which means is an acquisition. The Shimon Abayis, since Shimon rented the house, Areu kemecher gomu. You heard what he said? What the Rashba says? Areu kemecher gomu. It's like a complete sale. Woohoo! Kemecher gomu. It's like a complete sale. V'nischayev b'adomim. And being obligated with the money. It's a debt. He just owes the money, but it was a complete debt. What the father, the papa, Ruvain, when he rented the house, is a complete sale, and he owes the money. Ben Yodu, Ben Yodu, if he lives or he doesn't live there. You made a contract, you bought the rights. It's a buying. You bought the rights of usage, you owe the money. I don't give a hoot if you use it, don't use it, you die, you flew to the moon. Your children, you need to pay. Okay? The father has to pay. Now, if the father died, so the children need to pay from the father's assets. Yes, yes, yes. I'm talking about the Rashba here. The Alfal Pgav, and even though the Kaiman on Yeshlo Schiz with Chilavatzoy, even though the rule is that rental, the way you pay the rentals from the beginning till it means every 5 minutes or every hour or whatever it is that is the value of the minimum wage as pruto. Every time of pruto time, every slot of time that creates a debt of pruto, that's the moment you need to pay that. He says it's only a setup of payments. It's only mitchilav doesn't mean that proves that the usage is the reason of paying. No. The acquisition that I bought those rights is the reason of the payment. But the methods of payments is bitchilav every slot of time of Shavet Pruto, this is when you need to pay. Mikol Mokam, however, the renter is not allowed to leave the place bechol yoim veyoim, every day and day, and starts calculating the hours. He says, don't learn, since the methods of payment is according to the slot of minutes and hours of Pruto, means after 1 hour, okay, I use one slot, and bye-bye, the next slot I want to use. The sale was for slots. No. The sale was the whole time being. It's an acquisition of rights. But the methods of payment is according to slot. But you can't just leave and say the methods of payment means that's the acquisition of slots. He says, no, it's wrong. Elo mechuyavu, rather the renter is obligated not to leave the house until the end of the time and have to pay for it. This is very important. People do that. Says, you know what? I'm leaving. You go ahead and exert yourself and find somebody else to rent an exchange of me. You can't say that. He says, listen, it's your problem. Go rent it for others and collect from others the money. I'm not living here anymore. You cannot ask me for the money. No. The other, just opposite. The maskir stam lo shono. When you rent simply for 1 year, you're not allowed to leave the house and go out. Like you said, David, unless he made a clear recall. He announced at the beginning that he's going to leave or have an option to leave. He didn't make a closure on it. He can't leave. Unless a specific type of houses, stores, who knows what, that people live in the middle. So as if he will not say as if he said it. But stam, the acquisition is mechira for the whole thing. So what do we learn from this Marashba? This is what Kivega says. Let's go back to Kivega. It says, "V'yeshlil modkei v'ni v'tshuva sarash." What do you want to say?
One second is, so then there's the same sort of principle that's going on with the Cohen case that we just had. That because he has to rely on his contract.
Yes.
It's as if he has it.
Yes. It's the same idea. That's the reason we're learning it. We're learning it is about the same thing as by if the father rented the cow and he died, as a Bechoy gets a double share, not Kohen. A Bechoy gets double share in the rental. It's a question, how do I perceive rental? Of usage? From the Rashbam, what we see, Reb Bechoy, Reb Shleimer, Rabbi Shlomo, what do you see from the Rashbam? No, the Rashbam. Because he says, that if it was written only Roy Be'efer, I would say Schirus and Chakirus, it's somebody else did it. It's not Mimele because somebody worked it out. People work it out. It means the working is the reason of the payment. And it's not an acquisition that I bought rights to usage. It's that actually somebody using it is the obligation. So it's Mimele, it's not Mimele. Okay.
Because it's going to move. Because for the Bala bus, it moves forward with him. Right? When someone gets a rental, what's the next thing they do? They go invest in something else. Or they go and fix their house, or they go do something and take a loan on it. They could take a loan on future rentals so that they can go fix up their house.
Yes, that's what people do in reality.
Because a house.
If they weren't paid.
I want to read a little bit more because his time is out. There's 5 more lines to read and we'll summarize it. If the father left them obligation on assets, I looked in there, I didn't see anything. So something is wrong, I didn't find anything about it. He says after a long time, he found in the Ritva. The Kosav lady wrote clearly, the Sochar Aviyah Mumeis, he wrote clearly La'alocha. If the father rented and he died, the Mishtamshim Kol Me'aschirus, the children used the entire days of the rental. Ve'ein Chayovim L'Shalem Aschirus, they don't need to pay for the rental. Here it is. If he didn't leave them any way, any responsibility of assets to pay it. La'alocha. So that's when I read this, everybody screamed. So if somebody knows he's going to die, he can be a very wicked man. He has AIDS, he had this, that, who knows what. Cancer. He says, not making big rentals.
No, but Reifa is a different deal.
And the children won't get it for free.
But Reifa is a different law.
No, but it'll expire.
But normally people say, you have cancer, I want the payment before you. They're afraid of that guy. They know the kiveh, the ritva. So sorry, you want money up front. You don't want stories. You don't want debts.
But their ability to use is
Yes.
only restricted to the contract.
Yes.
And if they default, then they do become liable.
If there's a contract, what's the contract? When there's no clear contract, just rights to rent. That's why today, when we have a contract of rental, they have so many details because they learn from experience. So many holes, they take how do you call it, check bitachon. They take 1 month ahead. You know, not in Israel, and America probably it's the same. I don't know. But in Israel, when you rent a place, when you start renting, they want 2 months ahead. So they always 1 month ahead in the pocket. They make any trouble, they have enough money in the pocket to throw you out in time till they deal with you to get you out. They learn from problems. And I also in the yeshiva, I learned the hard way. A lot of problems with people. And they told me the yeshivas things. People are not so nice when it comes about money. They're not thinking straight anymore. Unfortunately. Anyhow, Lemaise, what we do, our goal was, it's a show, Tutz Dodim, Kiveiger, tomorrow we see the Kovetz Oris, read it yourself. And then we have to start learning the Rishon. You read the Rashbam, we have to read the Toises, the Rabbeinu Yoino, all is the same subject. How do I define Schirus? And my prime goal is to go to the Gemara. You have to learn the Gemara clear till the end of the page. The Psukim, how each one learns and how each one understands. So what exactly defined? Where Rebbe and Chacham argue. What's the argument exactly? The definition, is it, like Rabbi Feisha started to say, is it Svor Chitzoyno? Is it Psukim? We spoke yesterday, right? Where starts? From Kabbalah, they inherit from Moshe Rabbeinu, and then they read the Psukim, or that, is it Svor and they show the Psukim their way? Or that Kabbalah, what the Psukim are, and that's when it comes out, and definitions. We have to go through the details, a lot of details. You have to, it's physical work. You have to learn the Gemara well, with the Rashbam and the Rishonim. There's a lot of work here to be done.